kids who went there, who should have been in bands playing around the place, getting their stuff out.
Yeah.
Have like sprung out as if, they've forced us down and then the pressure spurted up over here and with renewed vigour. And there's some incredible. Isn't that right, Mike?
Yeah, you should come Tuesday nights.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bangalore.
When I'm back in the area.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's just outpouring of talent. And
the talent is absolutely awesome. Even, there was only like out of 10 acts, I would have said there were like...
Open mic, is it?
Yeah, open mic.
Yeah.
Out of like 10 acts, or maybe there's a dozen acts. Of like
there's 16 actually.
16 acts of what, 15 minutes each?
Yeah,
I think?
4 hours.
Yeah. There were like 2 that were like, not in tune, but having a go, and everyone loved it.
Yeah.
And the rest
were
absolutely fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
And you watch those ones who are trying will get better.
They will.
Yeah, with that encouragement and that support. And...
Everyone's nurturing, everyone's, supportive. The words that they hear are words of encouragement.
Yeah.
And then later Phil say, that was great, but perhaps just slow it down so we can hear the words a little bit.
Yeah.
Or, let go of the tuba. Or something like that.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Stop scratching your balls.
That's it. Get someone to scratch them for you.
Put them away before you
Yeah, that's right. What sort of act do you think this is?
Yeah, it's amazing. And like the night just finishes on such a high. The music kind of gets happier and vibier and partier as the time goes on.
Okay.
No one can plan that.
No, it's not planned either. Well,
right.
I mean, because Cody plays at the end. Kobia.
Yeah.
And he plays this really upbeat African music.
Yeah.
Right.
So we know that that's there.
Just solo or with the band?
No, with a band. Oh my god.
Everybody was up.
They had 2 sets of drums, like bongo.
No, 4.
4 sets of drums, keyboard, 2 guitars, saxophone, flautist.
2 flautists at one stage.
Yeah. At the same time.
The saxophonist.
And then lots of people just wandering around in the crowd with.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's
Guys, fucking off, dude.
Man, it's pumping. How's that German guy in sax, eh?
He's Swiss. Don't call him German.
Swiss, okay, yeah. He's a Schweizer Deutsch, is he?
He's
like
he
Richard.
must be because he speaks. German.
He sounds Germanic, yeah.
Yeah, he's from between Lucerne and Bern. So is that in the?
Yeah.
The south? No, that's in the west. So yeah, he must be German, Swiss German.
Awesome, great to know.
And it was funny because he was, when I first met him, he was a little bit sort of, I wouldn't say stiff, but just perhaps aloof.
German.
Yeah, German,
Swiss.
And after he's played, he goes, man, this guy's a fantastic. I think it's a fantastic time. You guys are so good. And he's really happy. He's turned on. What's just happened? Now he's the loosest guy there.
He's turned on.
Yeah, awesome.
After jamming with everybody,
Frank's the fluffer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he gets everyone warmed up and ready to fire.
Fluffy. Got to make it fluffy.
Fantastic.
Fluffers and tweeters.
Hey, good. How are you?
Good. Eli.
Eli, Sunbear.
Nice to meet you, buddy.
Yeah, good to see you, Eli.
Cheers.
I introduced you as Kent before, and I've
that's all right.
still got your name in my phone.
Yeah, I might be going back to
who's
that.
that?
I don't know. I've kind of flip-flop between
Where's
Sunbear
this
and
from?
Kent.
I brought it with me.
Nice.
So it would be good to have it hanging out.
Sure. Of course, Christian. I'm the barmaid apparently.
Yeah, we've got the skirt for you.
A kilt and a kilt. On stilts. Cults of kilts in kilts on stilts.
Cults of kilts. But I thought you were like Lebo.
Primarily.
Primarily,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
With a bit of kilt thrown in.
Mate, I'm genetically the squeezings of a brothel sheet.
I don't know if I heard that right.
Genetically the squeezings of a brothel sheet.
Sheet, right.
Yeah.
I heard brothel sheet.
That was what my
I
mate.
heard sheep too.
I heard sheep as well, and I'm like,
Nah, come on, you're projecting, boys, eh? Yeah. Keep the sheep in your own heads. Thank you, mate.
You fuck one, go.
Yeah.
No, that joke?
Yeah.
Respect your
No.
ancestors. You know?
No.
Oh. There's this guy, like this Greek herdsman,
Are we on TV at the moment or what?
What?
Are we broadcasting?
Well, Sandy's taken proprietary control of the on button.
Right.
Are we broadcasting?
The on button just goes on.
Yeah, but you got to tell us.
Yet? Has it gone on yet?
It's on.
It's
yeah,
on.
good. All right.
Okay.
Well,
We're live?
yeah, we're live. This is episode number 2 of the.
Streaming.
We're
There is
shrooming.
no
We should be
on.
shrooming and streaming.
We're shrooming.
Live shrooming.
Episode 2 of the yet to be named whatever this orgasmic mess is.
Excuse me. A bit of gender fluid on the floor there, mate. You better mop it up.
So there's this Greek what camera are we on, Sandy Mountain?
2 Greeks walking to a bar.
We're on the couch. Okay. So there's this Greek guy, herdsman, and he's talking to his friend and he's complaining. And he's going, they call Mike the bridge builder because he built this magnificent bridge. They call Stefano Maestro because he plays magnificent piano. They call Stephen Ivanov yachtsman because he builds the best yachts and sails around the world. I've built roads, I've built houses, I have 1,000, I look after the village, but you fuck one sheep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway, yeah, it's moving right along.
Sheep for pleasure.
Moving right along. So I'm washing up the cups.
You're the dish pig.
I'm the dish pig, and
Aussie,
Kent's-
Aussie, Aussie. Oink, oink, oink.
Oink, 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 and Kent's preparing the guitar.
Prepared.
Prepared. Frank's our barman for the day.
What'll it be, boys? Rack 'em up, bartender.
And Eli is the amazing Eli. Do you want to say something about yourself?
The amazing Eli.
The amazing Eli. Yeah.
Do I want to say something about myself?
Yeah.
Not really.
Okay. Good. Let's
good.
start.
I'll say something about him if you like. Let me
Yeah.
think about that Eli.
Go ahead.
Let me put you the picture about that guy Eli. Not while he's here though. You gotta see
Well, we
him.
can-
Hang on a sec.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
We'll edit it in.
Get him down in Studio B, the porn lot, while we talk about him in his absence.
Well, from my perspective, Eli's an amazing being, all together. Specialist in several healing modalities, and I would kind of say some kind of amazing herbalist. Is that camera working now? Yeah, that
You
one
don't
is.
have to worry that.
Yeah, I'm checking.
Herbalist.
Well, speciality in different types of plant medicines,
Sure. Yeah, that works.
and some kind of amazing community builder. Oh, so we've got no sound.
Attempted.
I'm going to shut up.
Okay.
Attempted.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
I've got sound now. Okay,
I
good.
know,
just-
it's
you
always-
get-
it's
I'm
always nice
getting
to see
Frank
how people
and
see
you. So,
Well, and future thinker and kind of carer for society.
Yeah, well, that's I have spent quite a few years focused on what hopes we can have for the situations we face and what solutions exist, and trying to put them all together in one place in terms of making them accessible to people. That's I don't know that any of that is really a fixed achievement yet, but it's definitely a work in progress. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
And a really good mate.
Yeah.
So I've known Eli for goodness knows 7 years now, I guess, somewhere around there.
Well, that's the best place to start.
That's the best place to start, from the heart. And we went through the University of Starseed Gardens and other community projects that were fun, fantastic, frustrating. Some of them are still going, and some of them failed spectacularly. So, as projects do. And so Frank's preparing some amazing concoction.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to tell us? This is the placebo. So do you want to tell us what's going on?
Well, this is the adrenochrome that I prepared earlier. And this
There
is
go the
From hippie
algorithms.
babies, this one.
yeah, that's right. Very happy babies they were. But this is the placebo here. This is the control. I won't tell you which one's which though.
Yeah.
I'm going to mix them all up and yeah. But you'll be the best version of yourself very shortly after drinking these. I feel because they're prepared with contempt and indifference. Which are the sorts of things you need because you need a bit of fibre in your guts. Too much pussy stuff, you know. We need some fibre in our guts, mate. Some, you need like Gurdjieff said, you need to eat bones, chew on them,
Right.
metabolize
Right.
the hard stuff,
The hard stuff.
Yeah,
Was that in the context of personal growth and development?
personal growth, mate. That's
Yeah,
right. I could give you a nice, sweet little, lemonade type of thingy, but I want something we're just going to put hairs where they deserve to be and remove them from places where they shouldn't be as well, by topical application actually. But give it a shot, guys.
Now that he's
Yeah,
blessed
cool.
the drinks,
Thank
maybe we should all bless the
Do you want to
drinks.
share them? Are the drinks in shot? Do you want to just hold it up to the camera so we can see what's in it? What they look like? Yeah.
Oh, your shirt,
Oh yeah, just
my,
My shirts.
my
yeah.
complexion.
It was actually
Your
clear
jacket.
before he blessed them.
Hey,
Yeah.
what's the accusation?
It was. Eli was just saying it was clear before the liquid was clear before you blessed it.
Yeah.
I'll have the indifference.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. There's the contempt.
I've got
Chewing on bones?
Merci beaucoup.
Here's the rancor, which, like chagrin, is French.
And number 5. Oh, Mr. Mountain, La Montagne.
La Montagne.
No, La Montagne can't.
Votre beverage ATC.
He's just been to the dentist, so he
Yeah.
can't drink anything from it all. Yeah, cheers. Here's
Cheers, lads.
to everyone. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, Buzz.
Cheers, bros.
Yeah, much love, many blessings. In all seriousness.
All around, in all seriousness.
In all seriousness.
Very pleasantly.
Yeah, well, here we are again.
Thank old mate. Here, madam.
Thank you, old mate.
My pleasure. We made a couple of adjustments since last week. We've moved this camera here, so the couch is
Gut level.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
or-
like all the close-ups.
yeah. So you've been to the gym then, Eli, right? So
Yeah, just before I came.
Just working out, yeah.
The Jim Beam? No.
The gym beam, yeah. Well, is it like that technique of doing 100 push-ups before you go on a date and getting the pheromones happening?
Pulling a muscle, and so then the whole day you're uncomfortable, pulling the face.
Get her to pull a muscle, mate. You don't look like...
It's a way to start the day. Pull a muscle. You want to pull a muscle?
Well, if you're anxious and a little bit overexcited about a date, then often pulling a muscle is the best thing you can do to relax.
Yeah.
That's a great start.
So I'm told.
As my boxing coach used to say,
Muscle, yes.
you're not allowed in the ring till you punch the bag a bit.
Not allowed to the ring till you punch the bag a bit.
Yeah. Boxing metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah, nice.
This is how we build community.
This is how.
It begins with irony. Grassroots irony, mate.
We've got to shed the ego at the door.
Irony clad.
Yeah.
Well, I also noticed today is a bit of a sausage fest. In the sense
sizzle.
that it's all men here today, which is good,
So it is.
which is fantastic. But so when I went out shopping, because we don't have our own elixirs yet or our own placebos yet, thought this would be appropriate for men, which is Mrs. Toddy's Glow, collagen, hibiscus, lemon, etc. Just to get some beauty going in us.
Controversial.
I'm glad you told me that after I drank it.
You're not interested in beauty.
Only if I can consume it.
Trying to claw back the sands of time trying to seize some of that youth as it slipped through my fingers. This could be the answer. The elixir of youth. Collagen.
Yeah, nice.
Mm.
And Kent, do you want to? Kent is only with us for like, well, potentially you might hang out a bit longer, but you're only with us for like half an hour. So
Did you want to hear a song?
yeah, we'd love to. We'd love to hear a song, and Kent's an amazing musician, and amongst a whole bunch of other achievements. And I don't know, you can
Cool.
share whatever you want to share, and sing us a song.
I'll sing you a song. Well, this is called I Know Nothing. I thought, it's a good place to start and zero.
Mm.
Bit of a contrast to the sausage fest, but
We needed that.
A few fish bits.
I know nothing. It's all I need to know. I know nothing. So I just keep listening to the whisper of the flow. So I just keep humming and just enjoy the show. So I just keep listening to the whisper of the flow. So I just keep humming and just keep letting go.
Yeah, man.
Cheers.
Yo.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Man, come up Tuesday night and share that with us.
Yeah, yeah.
What's that?
Come up to Bangersman Tuesday night and share that with us.
Put everyone to sleep.
No, I think
Meditative.
I think they'll need it.
Bit
They'll
of
need it.
introspection.
Yeah.
There's every flavour. It wasn't all up. There was some introspection, and it's all beautiful. It's all there. We have the screaming punk rockers from Lismore,
Yep.
if they weren't drowned, and some sort of folky, plucky, sort of soulful young chick singing, about the anxiety of youth and the modern world and shit, but
Yep.
doing it, getting it across. And then there are some just old hardcore sort of slide players just doing blues forever. So it's all there,
It's all there.
Mm.
And
Awesome.
even Frank doing complete improvised stand-up, and then all of a sudden there's 6 musicians up on stage with him backing him. It's really, it's really exquisite.
Awesome.
It's really exquisite.
Awesome.
I'd love to come. I haven't made it yet, but I'd love to come and I'd love to see you there. It was very beautiful and angelic. Special.
Mm.
Thank you very much.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Great way to meet someone.
Mm.
Like, wow. How about I just let my soul show you who I am? Oh, thanks. Nice.
Mm.
Hey, that left-hand slider. Do you want to dim the light a bit for poor old Kent? On the step there, just above the guitar, far left-hand one.
This one?
Yeah.
Is that? That's the far
Down
left
the
one.
bottom. Yep. Yeah. That just
All the
turns
way
light.
down. Oh yeah.
Whatever you want.
Yeah.
Whatever you want. Yeah. Just so you're comfortable.
Well, I like the pretty lights. So we'll just.
Mm.
How's that, Eli? Is that?
That's alright, yeah. Cheers, man.
Do you want the blues and greens, or do you want a few reds in?
Oh,
there
can you
as well?
decide? Can you
Oh, yeah,
decide?
decide. Pink's always good, yeah.
Yeah. Oop.
What?
All right. Oh, perfect.
Whatever makes your complexion look best.
Turn the lights
All
off,
about
thanks.
the complexion.
It's all about the.
It's radio, isn't it? No, it's not radio. We're live. Oh, that's right.
Oh, we're live,
Yeah, shit.
Yeah, you've got a great head for radio.
I left it at home though. Yeah.
But
I bought this one.
yeah. In that was angelic is a great word. I was trying to figure the word to describe it. I was kind of going with delicate and penetrating in a way in its infinite softness and delicacy.
Mm.
You kind of don't want to put a term to it or a definition to it. You know, it was like even when I said angelic, I was like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
you don't really want to put a term to it because it's so pure. But yeah, angelic purity, high frequency, beauty, sacred.
Mm.
Yeah. Mm.
Cool.
Mm.
Yeah. How long has that song been around for?
A few years.
It's a bit of a hymn, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm.
Sacred music.
Mm.
Like I mean, like Leonard Cohen.
Mm.
A lot of his songs are hymns. Sacred music, you know.
Yeah.
There's a place for it. There's always been a place for that.
Was it kind of written as a medicine song with that intention, or how did it
Yeah.
come
I was hanging out with at the greenhouse in Mullumbimby
Yeah.
with the crew there, and
Oh yeah.
yeah. And someone used to say that the more I know, the less I know,
Mm.
and it kind of developed from there.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Just
Yeah.
kind of came out really pretty quickly, and yeah.
Is that your creative process? It just comes out, or do you spend weeks writing songs, or how does that work for you?
Well, one of the last songs I wrote took a year
Mm.
to
Mm.
write, because I had the majority of it done, and then I just couldn't find the foundations and the sanctuary to allow the rest of it to
Mm.
to be birthed, kind of thing. Yeah. And then someone put me on a deadline. They said, we've got this, we're doing this Stop 5G video, and we want to use that song. So get it recorded, and so we can use it. And so I was like, okay, all right, well,
Sure. Incentive.
incentive.
Mm.
Yeah.
And for such a cause as well.
Yeah.
Mm. So you're local to Mullumbimby?
But mostly, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I got a bit displaced
Mm.
due to the flood
Okay.
and whatever. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that, bro.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's all good. It's
Yeah.
all
Part of the mission. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people growing as a result of something they weren't ever anticipating they'd have to face. But that's kind of how it happens. Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the universe doesn't like wasting energy, and sometimes it's not elegant in the way that it moves you to where you need to be.
Well, that's an elegant way to put it. Yeah.
More beverages, guys.
Sure.
Mm.
Thank you.
Now, I've added the Wuhan bat laxer. We used to that. And a bit of deep fried monkey thrombosis in there.
Homeopathic dose.
I mean, of course, you know.
Just to counterbalance your blessings.
Cheers,
Frank's keeping things in check.
Yeah, no, that's good. We've got to keep
Cheers,
that on
chaps.
the
Can't let
ground.
those angels out of hand.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Got to keep some kind of hegemonic masculinity, well and truly in
Yeah,
place.
exactly. Tentacles.
Would you like
Especially in
would you
these
like your
times.
collagen with bioweapons?
You know that's the only way I take it.
Does that mean that you only take bioweapons with collagen as well?
Look at this face here, you know. A lot of work to achieve this. A lived-in face, or lived-on face, maybe.
Hey Frank, you look more and more like Ginger Megs every day.
Oh, thank you. I'm still ginger anyway. Yeah.
Well, that's the counterbalance, right? The counterbalance to all the ugliness is the bioweapon of beauty.
Hey, I got my teeth, bro.
Contagious beauty.
I got all my own teeth.
Wow, that's an achievement.
But I can't remember where I left them.
But what does hegemonic mean?
Hegemony means like dominance. Yeah, so it's part of that neo-Marxist critical theory of gender theory. Hegemonic masculinity is kind of almost akin to toxic masculinity,
Right.
I guess, according to them. But it's like the dominant paradigm of masculinity. Yeah.
So when you say hegemonic or monocultural, like they mean the same thing, or one is more in a cultural setting and one is more, do you know?
No, but if I was to guess, then yeah, hegemony means like dominance.
Is it more like authority dominance or just dominance?
I think like dominance of that paradigm
Check.
kind of thing, like not but implied in that, is the sense of viriarchy or patriarchy.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and those traditions.
Viriarchy.
Viriarchy.
Oh, I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, because patriarchy,
Paternal.
paternal father.
Yeah.
So you can have a patriarchal society which is still balanced, and that's a controversial statement. But viriarchy, viriarchy is more pointing to the power aspect of it. Yeah, power over.
Power over.
Hegemon.
Yeah. Well, hegemony, according to Wikipedia, is the political, economic, and military predominance of one state over another. So yeah, power over, I guess. And viriarchy. You've got a better vocabulary than me, bro.
Maybe. Different.
I'll have the chicken teriyaki, please. The Vindaloo's too vindictive.
Did you look up viriarchy? So archy, archon, ruler.
Here we go. I'm just getting it now. It's all coming up patriarchy and viriarchy as though they're closely linked.
So that's where archon, ruler.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wish we had
monarch. Yeah.
I see.
And
But I wish we lived in a patriarchy.
No ruler.
I wish we lived in a patriarchy. At least there'd be some paternalistic. We live in an evilarchy. We have what I call a sadistocracy. We're ruled by sadists
Ugly archy.
who seem to ride on pain and luge and suffering, and it seems vampiric. If we had a patriarchy, a few kindly granddads taking care, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
But we have a whole bunch of masquerading as vaguely that. They're sort of kitty fiddlers and torturers and parasites, and I don't know what you call that. But I call it a sadistocracy.
Yeah.
Or what Plato would call a caciocracy, which is ruled by shit.
Ruled by shit.
Yeah, that's what he called it.
As soon as he said, I knew what it meant. I'm like,
Caca.
It's easy to understand.
Yeah, don't step in the caca. Yeah, don't step in it. We voted for it.
So, viriarchy is, by this definition anyway, is ruled by adult males.
Right. Okay.
So it's interesting the separation of adult males, adult in quotes, males, and patriarchy, which is more about power over. But patriarchy, which is about the paternal aspect, right?
Yes.
So.
And then the hegemony, which is the power over.
Which is the power over. But the separation of gender from masculinity, from what is it? It's the difference between gender from masculinity and maturity, which is where I see the word adult fitting into it, right? Because they're three separate dimensions of describing the whole thing that's going on. Often they all get collapsed into one, and that creates I think that creates all sorts of confusion.
Yeah, so those three categories again. What was the middle bit?
The three categories. So let's split gender from so gender being the viriarchy, from emotional maturity being the adult, from so patriarch, paternal, so from the caring parent kind of perspective. And then you can also put in gender roles in there as well if you want, just to split it all out. But we definitely live in a society that's been dominated by the masculine and, well...
So the immature masculine that identifies as an adult isn't actually an adult, has the power of an adult without the responsibility of an adult. So it's a control drama story, really.
Well put.
Yeah, that's really the issue we face, is that the dominant force is still in immaturity because it's in narcissism, authority, control, domination. Destroy what makes you feel vulnerable. Right?
Yeah. And what Dr. Stuart Savatsky would say, who's a yogi and has worked like rehabilitating like youth and drug affected people, is that they're at a stage of spinal puberty. So their consciousness is stuck in the lower chakras of survival and dominance and competition, and so part of that transition or that transformation is actually, is finding healthy ways. Finding healthy ways to educate around sexuality and around spirituality and around, the channeling and even the awareness of those subtle energies. That we're running, that consciousness kind of rides on, in terms of the, Tibetan system or the Chinese medicine system.
So we seem to live in a society there of emotional immaturity. There's a lot of immature masculine and a lot of immature feminine around as well.
But that's lower management, though, isn't it?
Say that again?
That's lower management.
Yeah.
The ruling elite
That's right, that's
are positively psychotic. I mean, immaturity, yes, but utter psychosis. Have you heard of a guy called Andrew Lobachowski? He's a Polish sociologist afterwards.
No.
So he wrote a book called Ponerology.
That name again?
Andrew Lobachowski.
Lobachowski.
It's spelt with a whole bunch of consonants in weird places and shit.
What's
Polish
his
name.
cultural background?
Polish. So he was there when the Nazis came and went, and then when the Bolsheviks ran it, up through the time of Lech Walesa, and then he came after Lech Walesa to the west.
Yeah, well, that's quite modern.
Yeah. He spent 30 years under the yoke of Bolshevism, and millions died, tortured to death, all that sort of stuff. And he went through Nazis and Bolsheviks, and sort of like he wrote. He had to pretend he was he's killed.
Yeah.
Same as in Cambodia or in France during the French Revolution or anywhere. So so he was pretended to be the obedient servile dude. Well, he fled from his post. If he'd stayed there, he'd have been killed. And he wrote his treatises, his observations of what happens to people when in a psychotic regime, when the leaders are utterly psychotic. I mean, brutal sadists who enjoy infliction of pain and are genocidal, who'll kill millions. Delightfully, there's very, very few people in the world can enjoy serving oceans of blood and pain, but they are there, and they're organised and they're intelligent. And this is a challenge to most minds. This is so challenging.
Yeah.
This is beyond, and this is what Lobachowski says. The West doesn't get it because they haven't lived through it.
Not ready to face that.
They talk about patriarchy, matriarchy, this and that. And these are themes, but what we have is psychosis and evil. So he says, Ponerology was the medieval study of evil as a thing.
Uh-huh.
So
How
evil
do you
was,
spell that? Ponerology.
as it sounds, Ponerology.
Ponerology.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite phonetic.
Yeah.
So poneros was a Greek word for evil.
Uh-huh.
So ponerology was the study of evil, and it was a medieval theological sort of study. And in the modern world, it fell out of favour in a more relativistic world of, nothing's good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. So it sort of tended to get sort of dusted, but he's reintroduced it, and when real evil, like you can torture a family to death in front of the members,
Yeah.
and bury them alive, and you're an authority. I mean,
Well, that's how the authority is maintained, through that level of fear.
so
Yeah.
but there's more than authority there. This requires studying. I mean, Lobachevsky is the first to admit he doesn't really know how deeply this goes.
Does he go into the satanic, demonic kind of aspects?
Yeah,
Of,
yeah. But
of it,
yeah.
of ponerology.
Well, it's the study of evil, right? So you
Yeah,
have to,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he does less so than we probably would, because he's looking at the behaviour, and rather than lots of people who are psychotic aren't necessarily satanic, But I reckon they've all been influenced or affected by it.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, when you've got Black Jack the Ripper or lots of psychotic killers, in my view, and I used to lecture in criminology,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So, in my view, they're created. They create the demon to sort of like to terrify the masses, to come in and save them with police powers and authoritarianism. The first thing the government must do is create a shit fight to legitimise its existence.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned Jack the Ripper there,
Mm.
yeah. So it's interesting because if you look into him a little bit,
Mm.
it looks like he was part of the elite royal family, and he was also set up by the Masons to play that role.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you see these occult forces
Mm.
through time since
Mm.
Babylon, having this particular role in society to maintain these personalities.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of the grid that they've set up.
Yeah.
Is to maintain the ability for these authority structures
Mm.
and these personalities to have their roles in society. And
There's no
you
such
see
thing as a born psychotic. It's been said, and
That's really interesting, because I've read studies that say that have linked genetics to psychopathy,
Mm-hmm.
and what they were saying was about 1% of people are born with psychotic genes, so are born psychotic.
I don't believe it, but
Yeah, I mean, this is what the study says, right?
epigenetics.
Psychotic
and-
or psychopathic?
Psychopathic, sorry,
Well,
psychopathic. And then, but this study also went on to say that about 9-10% of people are highly influenced by a psychopath.
Mm.
So in the presence of the psychopath, about 10% of people will behave psychopathically.
Mm.
And then the other 90% of the population just goes,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
Well, this is what Lobachevsky's,
Basically.
Mm-hmm.
this is what Lobachevsky's on about. But he says that what happens is people who weren't psychopathic cross the line because you can't survive without joining. Like he was an academic, and he was teaching academia. He had points of view, and then all of a sudden he saw these young. He would have been 40ish or 50ish at this stage. He was a very old man at the end of it. But he said that these young, sort of like fresh-faced, grim-looking apparatchiks would say, "Here is the new syllabus. You will teach this." And you look at it; it's sort of thin and it's just sort of, narcissistic, patriotic, flag waving drill.
Sure.
And he goes, "Oh, let me. No, there's no sort of like wiggle room here. This is the syllabus. Have you got a problem with it? I'll take it to high command." "Oh, no. So no, okay, sure, it's the new syllabus." So either you play along, and if you, after all, you cash in your chips and your bail or whatever. But he says that's what's offered. And so he said some people just straight away go fuck you, and they're gone. They just disappear. They're dragged off at 3 a.m, never to be seen again. Others who are a bit in the middle, sort of like get the idea and sort of like just resentfully give over because they've got to pay for their kids, food and tuition, rent, that reality. They're stuck with that. And he says, and a small group happily embrace it, and but there's a small group. This is what he observed, and he had all sorts of terms and examples. Andrew Lobachevsky's really worth reading. But he's banned. The West don't like him. They don't like him. because it applies equally to their regime as to any regime. It's not a deconstruction of the evil saviour bloc any more than it's a deconstruction of any power structure.
Yeah, so it
And
applies
so-
to all power structures
Yeah.
and the way they manipulate people to keep control and
The
keep
nature
power.
of psychopathy and how the psychopath achieves power, and it's in a ponerology, how the acquisition and the maintenance of psychopathic power.
It's quite a thing to see how personalities can maintain those structures. Like, you know, obviously none of us have quite come into contact, or maybe Frank, you have when you've been overseas, but into that level of vile in your face violence and, you know, the genocidal, actual homicidal rage of these people. But, you know, we've all had the encounter with people who are having particular pathological personality dynamics and particular issues, and you watch it and you think, you know, what an effort to maintain that, to be able to keep those stories going and keep that facade and that structure and that identity and everything that goes with it, and to maintain that lack of feedback and responsiveness and change, to be able to feed the ego structure that allows them to stay that way, you know, regardless of what goes on. And we've all had those encounters with people and you're just like, well, how do you even go along like this, you know? It's quite a remarkable thing, you know. You can kind of shift it from like, it's horrible, to like, wow, how fascinating.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah, and I think for the rest of us that don't behave that way, it is a cognitive dissonance. Like when I've experienced those people, and I have kind of, I think, in intimate relationship as well as in community, I think because I'm generally good-natured and give people the benefit of the doubt and just assume that they're always coming from a good place, that behaviour I can't quite comprehend. So it takes me a while to adjust and realise it, and then react to it or respond to it appropriately to manage it.
It's almost incomprehensible.
It is.
It is.
You don't
That's
get
what
it.
I'm saying.
Yeah, why'd you do this?
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that for? Can't we make this fun for everybody? Can't we all get on? You know, we're coming from that place.
Yeah.
And that is the importance of studying, you know, ponerology or the enemy.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, our ignorance or our vulnerability is assuming that either it doesn't exist or it doesn't happen like that, when it very much does.
The point he makes.
And so if you think about, you know, in Australia with the colonial settlers coming to the coast in the boats, and the original folk walking out and not being able to, like, seeing this thing but not really being able to process what they're seeing, not being able to, they had no reference point for it. And that's like, you know, how our personality or psyche develops with these dynamics. Is we're vulnerable to it and we keep getting burned because we just don't have a reference point for it.
Yeah.
We try and tell the
And
kids that.
I'm not sure. I just want to, like, there's a lot of myth about, like, romanticism and myth about early indigenous ways of being and where their technology was. But I think you're right. At some point they must have seen a ship for the first time, but Cook wasn't the first ship to land on their shores. They had regular visits from lots of other countries.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I just wanted
So
to
the story there
disconnect.
was more along the lines of when ships first came and they couldn't be recognised for what they were because there was no reference point.
The
for
very
it.
first time.
Yeah,
Whenever that was.
Maybe the pre-Phoenician. Yeah.
Pre-Phoenician. Well, you know, theoretically the Egyptians were here in Australia as well.
Phoenician.
So
Not theoretical.
Phoenician remains have been found
It's
too.
not theoretical.
no, it's not theoretical
No.
for sure.
Canaanite Phoenician remains have been found in North Queensland.
Yeah.
Which,
Sorry?
Canaanite - Phoenician.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it's
Phoenicians and
debatable,
Canaanites, yeah.
debatable whether they sailed or whether they came here by other means as well. So
Well, I have heard stories
That's-
from elders about that. So.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's all conjecture. So I find it fascinating that we've landed on this topic because yesterday Eli and I were talking a little bit about how do you raise issues in community, I guess it was, and how do you have difficult conversations and speak what needs to be said in a trauma-informed, healthy kind of way. And I think this sets the context for that discussion really, because we can't assume that the people we're talking to are mentally healthy or hold
Or honest.
or honest or hold good intentions for
Well,
people.
that's really our failing. Our failing is to assume that that's what we're dealing with because it's not. It's simply not. Yeah. And so that's really like that's the difficulty or the seemingly impossible situation.
Yeah.
Is that we're trying to deal with things that are unmanageable completely. and don't actually have a framework or a process that we can apply to say, hey, you know, can we put these solutions in place, or didn't we have these agreements, or what about it? Because it goes, what's the, Lord of the Flies, right?
Yeah.
It goes Lord of the Flies, and then
William
once
Golding.
it's out of the box, right? It's out of the box, and you're like, you can't put it back in the box, and it's out of the box, and it's, you can do things within that box, but now it's out of it, so what are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
Pandora's box.
Well, I think the thing too is that you know, I've been involved in community projects where we did all the right things, right? You know, vision, mission, created alignment amongst the group, created all our agreements around governance, decision making, conflict resolution, etc. But when the conflict hit the fan, the people that were doing the kind of psychopathic power over move just went, well, I don't care what agreements we have, you know, let's metaphorically or even physically punch on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, the lack of accountability is how that structure is maintained, and the inability for us to hold it accountable. So if you look at the forceful dynamics in the world, the reason those forceful dynamics in the world dominate is because we haven't had a means to hold it accountable. And so the same is true on an interpersonal or a group or a community scale. It's unless each member in that group is able to find a way to hold accountability, one unaccountable.
But there will be a psychopath
Sure.
who won't give a shit.
Yeah.
And they're, remember, a psychopath's 1% of the population, and they're perfect chameleons.
But they also
Perfect
congregate.
chameleons.
They also congregate because you get more of them in one place at certain times.
Yeah, yeah.
Like politics, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Sure.
But-
well, no, but it's been shown that corporate hierarchies and all that kind of stuff is
Mm.
essentially
Where-
psychopathic
Yeah.
kind
Because
of
power
structure.
dynamics without accountability, it has like a black hole attractor of field to these
Yeah.
personality dynamics.
So we got to make people psychotic, aware of the psychopath.
Do you know your lights are on?
No, but if you hum me a few bars, I'll pick it up.
On your car, the lights are on.
Good gracious, thanks, mate.
Oh, cool.
Okay, I'll attend to that matter.
That's just what you want to do with an electric car.
Yeah. Frank's charging his electric
Frank's
car.
charging his
but it's-
electric car with the lights on.
He left the tap open, the lights on. Yeah. I was just thinking of something. The other. So just to take a little side tangent from what you said before about, you know, because you called them the enemy, right? You know, I was listening to Tyson Yunkaporta, you know, Indigenous Indigenous man, lecturer in Indigenous knowledge systems at Deakin University, and he talks about, well, everyone has their place, right? So the psychopaths, you know, or people with those kind of tendencies, you know, are part of the community, they're part of the whole. So find out what they're good at and find out what they're enjoying and find out what's beneficial for the community. So, you know, one example is that psychopaths may end up loving to work in the abattoirs and do, you know, that kind of work that the average person may not want to do. And I think we're just I'll just introduce this into the discussion as well. We're touching on the use of violence and where does violence, healthy violence, sit in a community. Because when we start talking about accountability and then psychopaths do become physically violent, you know, there is, especially from an Indigenous perspective, a healthy place for violence in community as well. So
And there's varieties. In the state of psychopathy, there's you got the guy who's sadistic who wants to cut your fingers off because it's fun. But then there's the mafia boss who probably won't be like that.
Yeah.
Those guys are enforcers. You got, you know, and there's a language of power, and it's understated. You get the idea. So I look at you and say, I think our friend needs to be taught a lesson. You know what to go and do. You're going to enjoy it. I don't give a fuck. You know, the boss, the capo di tutti capi, Don Corleone. He doesn't give a shit. Just go and do the job. Just, you know, sort this problem out. I don't need to know. I don't want to know. You know, but the other guy is happy to go and do it. So,
Specialisation of labour.
yeah,
so to speak.
I mean, there used to be this distinction between sociopaths and psychopaths. The distinctions, psychiatry is just a mess. It's a complete mess. It doesn't make much sense internally. But the old way was that The sociopath is the indifferent. I don't care. I'm the big businessman. I don't care if I crush this little community. If it's not on my face, I don't care if I'm making money. But the psychopath was the one who enjoyed, was sadistic.
Right.
That distinction, they've abandoned that distinction. I think with sleep, that made sense. That was taxonomy.
So sadist and psychopath are synonymous.
They're saying that they're synonymous. Psychopath and sociopath are now regarded as synonymous.
Whereas sociopath has no remorse and no empathy, right? That's the
Both of
definition
them.
of sociopath. There's not a feeling sense of
Mm.
care and concern or awareness beyond
Mhm.
the self, right?
Mm.
Narcissistic disregard for
Yeah.
all life. Whereas
Mm.
psychopath
Mm.
is actually enjoying. He's actually like feeding on it,
Yeah.
enjoying it, and
Yeah. He's beyond indifference.
yeah.
He enjoys
Getting
it.
off on it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do we have examples that everyone would know of a psychopath, like
sure.
famous people?
I've met him.
Yeah. So
I mean, a guy
who would we all know?
Well,
No, I mean, like,
in
you know,
Australia, you'd think
Australia.
of Ivan Milat, right? You'd think of the Milat brothers,
Yeah.
Right.
Because they were out, they were
Yeah.
having a good time killing people.
I met a guy who killed a lot of people with a hammer. Claw hammer, just caved their heads in. What was his name again? I think of his name in a second. He was my uncle was a barrister. I was young. I was a junior. I was learning the game and had to sit down and talk. He was very polite, sort of, almost nice.
Mm.
But it is an interesting thing to think about because you think of that level of people enjoying harming others, and you think of a serial killer or one of these grotesque creatures in society. But actually, the social psyche and the authority systems in the social psyche have integrated that into their personalities. Because if you look at lots of the police, the politicians, they all enjoy their position of power, knowing that other people are suffering as a result of their power, right? So it's like on a social level, it's become normalized in this system to benefit from the suffering of others and to take joy in your success, even when you know that success has been stolen from someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the world.
There's that de-individuation process. What's his name? Dr. Philip Zimbardo. Kind of.
Mhm.
Illustrated in the prisoner experiment.
Oh, right. Yep.
As well, and so there's that diffusion of responsibility and
Into the collective.
yeah,
That's where that violent groupthink is, because it becomes a group possession where the group is the one fulfilling the role of the psychopath.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
no one's personally
No one's personally accountable because yeah.
When I was at
Definitely,
uni-
I've seen the
Mm.
power of that in group dynamics.
Mm.
If you have multiple people in the group that are being accountable and are maintaining a particular thing that's harming people, it's really bizarre to see how the group functions like that.
Can you give an example?
Can I give an example of how I've experienced it? Or-
yeah. What are you thinking?
I probably wouldn't go into details here because
Okay.
it's a little bit too sensitive and too many things involved. So, and potentially people in triangulation dynamics.
Yep.
But I see that narcissistic abuse, right? It occurs through a dynamic of enabling. So for every one abuser or psychopath or sociopath or violent criminal, there's a whole network of people who are supporting and maintaining that, right? And that's their like group dynamic that their victims become a victim of as well.
Yeah.
Right? So a reflection of that would be our culture, kind of not our culture. I'm not going to say our culture, but the colonial culture and how it's normalized the naming of places after people who have massacred original people, and even now to this day, those names and statues and the pride of those people and the pride of that land in that culture is connected to something heinous.
Look, our leaders are killing people now.
Exactly.
Like as we speak,
As
West
we speak.
Papuans are being wiped out.
Yeah.
Who by? Australian corporations.
Yeah.
Not the Indonesians. Forget it. The Indonesians didn't invade East Timor. They didn't invade West Papua. Australian corporations did, using Indonesians as a proxy military force. They're a third world country. They don't invade countries. They're a bitch nation. They do what they're told. And Australia was high up the food chain. So, the invasion of East Timor, destruction of West Papua, ongoing. It's aided and abetted, militarily trained in Bundaberg, aided and abetted since the 70s to this day. So,
And it's that group
our leaders
dynamic.
are killing people
It's the group dynamic that allows
in
it to-
Bougainville.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so this is an interesting thing. This is polarology. We're into polarology now. You know, the nature of psychosis and power. You know, the psychopath and power. It's and it is hard to understand because, like, you know, you can get, you know, in small groups, like, you know, trying to do things, you get like some sort of dominant people, and they're just egocentric, and lacking self-awareness, narcissistic, but not necessarily narcissists in a pure sense.
Yeah.
Lack of, you know, just, you know, they're not necessarily evil, but they're probably not evil. They're just not, they're not good or bad.
Well,
They're just,
I think this is the maturity versus immaturity.
that's maturity and stuff, but at this level, when you're talking about, say, ScoMo or anyone who's been a head of state, anyone who's been a head of state is at to sanction mass murder. You have to.
Yeah.
Sure.
But that's the game.
You have to be aware. It implies a level of awareness.
Well, no, a level
Collaboration. If you're the president,
Yeah.
you're more than a collaboration.
Yeah.
You're technically the buck stops with you.
Yeah.
It doesn't really, but
No.
at least, you know.
It is the figurehead of a system.
But you still have a lot of power.
You
You can
can't
do.
remain ignorant of,
You're not ignorant of it,
of
man.
the corporate
Well,
skullduggery
You can't say no
going
to it.
on.
If you're in
No.
that position, you can't say no to it. You've
But
got
can
to,
you say yes without being aware of what you're saying yes to?
probably not. No, I don't reckon they'd let you through.
No.
No.
But maybe in
Just playing
Small,
the devil's
maybe-
advocate.
yeah,
you're
no.
angels, you know,
It's like the ignorant, some ignorant person, or, you know, well-meaning, some well-meaning person once they get elected to local council and is all in favour of mandatory vaccines because they think they're, you know, they mean well. They're utterly idiotic to believe it, and
Useful idiots, right?
Useful
It's
idiots.
part of the strategy play is
U- useful idiots.
Useful idiots.
but they're not like they just got to be in their bonnet, and it's, you know, their time to sort of like shine. A bit of limelight floods on them, and they've got a flag and they've got to fly their issue. You know, global warming and vaccinations. These are my two big issues. I want to get elected on those two, and of course they're farcical because any deconstruction they disappear into a mire of nothingness and fucking evil mess, really. But they mean well. Like, I mean, a lot of my friends, I mean, I come from the left green side, but it's been the ideologies have been poisoned, infiltrated, and now there's this massive divide within our community. You know, like, I mean, I'm an environmentalist, but I don't believe in global warming. Well, you know, I mean, it's not about believing in it.
You might believe in climate change, but you don't believe in carbon dioxide-driven global warming. They're two different things, right? Climate change means the climate is being affected and changing, versus global warming means that this has happened because of CO2.
But all that stuff is...
Most discerning people who come from an environmental or an ethical background will look at it and go, this whole CO2 global warming thing is a complete bullshit, right? But there is climate change, and there is human-induced effects of climate change. So we've got to from what I can see.
But climate change doesn't mean anything. The two words don't mean anything. Climate change, what does it mean? Anything you like.
Well, it means
underpants change. You know,
well,
I mean,
not really. It means the climate's changing. I mean, that's the literature.
every
and the climate does change.
every millisecond, it's hotter now than it was a millisecond ago.
That's the weather. The weather is day-to-day changes in the weather, and climate change is kind of geological scale change in the
Larger scale
overall
patterns.
Yeah, larger scale patterns over centuries and millennia. So
sure.
And the Earth has always done that. So climate change, let's call it natural climate change, is always been here, and it's just a fact of life.
Yeah.
Like you build your house on the beach, and then you complain when the house gets washed away because the coastline changes. That's humans not understanding nature. So climate change is normal.
But the issue that I see on all
It's
of
called ratification.
these situations is, you know, we can talk hypothetically or we can talk realistically that the controlling elite forces use hyperpolarization and hyperpolarization in the social narrative as a way of controlling the narrative. Right? Control the narrative, control the population.
Massage the narrative.
Right? So this whole thing around climate change or gender pronouns or whatever, it's designed as a psyop.
Distraction.
It's designed as a psyop to keep people split in the way that they
Yeah.
think about things,
Yeah.
the way they think about themselves, the way they think about each other, and the way they interact. And so you can keep the social organism in a certain level of fracturing and controlled fracturing, and then use control drama and trauma as a way of maintaining that construct. And just keep flooding it with the media, keep flooding it with the propaganda, keep flooding it with the stories and the events.
Yeah.
The personalities.
And in case, in
Okay,
case anyone's thinking that this is like conspiracy theory, I mean, last year or beginning of this year, the English government came out and admitted to using psyops to control the vaccination program in the UK.
Yeah.
So there's, I forget the name of the brigade, it's like Brigade 67, there's an army brigade, it's a psyops brigade, and they were put in charge of the COVID narrative. I mean, so the politicians are all, of course of the election and stuff like this, the politicians in the UK are coming out and lying. Even Fauci, our friend Fauci over in the US,
My friend. We broke up years ago.
he said that they intentionally lied to people to scare them into getting vaccinated.
So you get back $340 million.
So psyops is not, it's not a conspiracy, it's the people that are doing it have actually admitted they're doing it.
All media is a psyop. Media is a psyop. It's always a psyop.
Well, I don't know about that.
If it's true.
Well,
If it's
All
true.
all media.
Doesn't mean it's bad.
Mainstream
So
media, okay.
it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's not bad nor good. If I tell you Christmas exists, it's a psyop. If I tell you it doesn't exist, it's a psyop. It's a psychological issue. And everything is.
Well, I think the terms
And
are more like the military-industrial complex and the intelligence community and the governance community and the religious communities all working together to run, covert or subversive influence upon the population to create a desired outcome, which has been happening since Babylon.
Misinformation,
Babylon
disinformation.
system, it hasn't changed since Babylon. There's nothing new under the sun. It's just got a modern branding or a modern technology, but it's the same story the whole way through.
Yeah.
It's always a psyop.
See, I wouldn't. I would disagree with that. Like, I don't think you can make generalizations like all media is psyops.
That doesn't mean it's bad.
So
No,
I'm not saying it's bad.
No assumption it's bad.
Listen. Let me say that. Like, there is media in the world that is telling the truth.
Plato's a
and
psyop.
what's happening, right? So
Yeah.
I wouldn't call that a psyop.
Why not?
Because for me, okay, so what I would call a psyop is it's like manipulation. It's intentionally.
Why is it?
It's well, I'm trying to say.
Okay, go. Thank you.
I love the passion.
Yeah. I'm all ears.
Look, for me, this is the way I see things. If you speak from truth and good intent for everybody, then that is what I would call, loving normal communication. As soon as you start to lie and change, even lying through, blatant lying through it's nighttime versus daytime, or lying through emphasizing certain things over other things, then it becomes a manipulation because you're not presenting the full truth to the other person to make an informed decision about what's going on. And once you do that in a coordinated program or operation, that to me becomes a psyop.
I essentially agree with what you're saying.
Yep.
And our dispute is semantic.
Is it?
It's terminological.
Well,
So in the sense that you're saying a psyop means this for you. And
Yeah,
psyop
yeah.
doesn't mean that for me.
No, I get
Yeah.
it.
The word propaganda
Yeah.
isn't innately bad. It means to propagate, means to spread.
Sure.
That which is spread. You can be spreading the Socrates' truth, the greatest truth you can find, and it's a psychological operation. To make you psychologically empowered, aware, philosophically capable. It's a psychological operation. To make you feel good, to make you feel focused and happy is a psychological operation. To make you feel weak and busted is a psychological operation, and that's how it's run too. The governments, the armies do this thing about winning hearts and minds. That's a psyop. And another thing to make them terrified is a psyop. So
Sure.
there's no it's not innately bad, but it's a terminological distinction here. It's not to the essence of what we're saying. I agree with you in essence.
Well, the manual that was written on wasn't called negative psychological operations. It was called psychological operations.
Yeah. That's a different category. It's a subcategory.
Yeah.
Positive and negative are the next two categories down.
Yeah.
And then you go further and further.
And
Yeah.
this brings us into what you and I were talking about yesterday on the phone, about talking about how to talk about things, right? Because the whole issue that we have in society is a complexity system, and the solution is a really simple one in terms of those of us who choose to apply the right solutions will know to look for intent, look for agenda, look for bias, and look for the ability to discern between subjective and objective, right? The ability to go, this is actual factual, and this is interpretation, or this is deliberate misrepresentation of factual, right? So you've got a spectrum between what actually happened without the intent of bias or agenda, the actual facts. and then how far away from that are we, right? So if we as a species decided we're just going to organise our information, how we relate, based upon that very simple thing, we'd sort out all these problems because we'd know to
Sure.
look for it, we'd present the information in that way, and we'd go through the process of saying, well, what is subjective? What is our subjectivity together, right? What's intersubjective? What's your subjectivity? What's mine, right? And that would be the process for us to figure things out. And you don't have to do it once. You
Yeah.
don't have to keep going through these cycles of all this stuff, because you do it once, and that would set a linear progression in information and realization and consciousness and ability as a species.
Yeah, completely. I mean, there's a few different conflict resolution processes that kind of go through that process. There's one, and I can't quite fully remember it, but it's like you start with the facts. So you go through all the facts, and everyone agrees the facts, emotionless. You go through your interpretations of what happened, of the facts of what happened. Then you go through the emotions. I think it's that order. And then you get to the, well, where are we now? Kind of the conclusion.
Yeah.
And it's got a fancy acronym for it, which sounds really cool. I can't remember what it is. But then you come to the conclusion, and by the time you've done that kind of left brain, right brain, intellectual, emotional processing of the situation, as long as people are willing to sit around the table and get through it, then you kind of come to a landing that's, where that's a lot clearer and people are more aligned. So the conflict is resolved, in quotes.
Yeah. Well, that's the conundrum, though, isn't it? Is that it's a conceptual model, and so one has to, have an initial conceptual engagement with it in order to participate. So if they're a feeling, sensate personality, they might just go, I know what the truth is, I feel it, I know it, and this is all an obscuration of natural law. What we need to be doing is something, this is an abstraction, and it's part of the, it's part of the intervention, or it's part of the infiltration, of the Western kind of mindset, and we're really getting away from our authentic organismic sensing. And
well, that's like an integrative model of how we sense, right? So we've got all these different senses. We might have a couple of hundred, or maybe even more than a couple of hundred senses. We're only aware of a certain amount of them, but we're constantly in the totality of how we're operating those senses, right? And my understanding of that process that Mike just described for conflict resolution is it's a fail-safe, right? If you get people to go through that process, there's not going to be maintaining conflict, because each step actually refines the reason why the conflict exists. The problem is, some people go through that process of their own ability, or their own volition, or their own initiative before they go and try and plow through a conflict. And some people will be available to go through that in the conflict dynamic with other people, and some people won't do either of those things, right? And the reality is the people that don't do those things are going to dominate the whole thing until 85 or 90% of the people are like doing that properly.
Yeah.
And that's the impasse that we're at, culturally, socially, relationally, spiritually. Because this internal conflict isn't getting processed, and so the interpersonal and collective field and constellations of conflict aren't getting processed. And that's why everyone's getting sickness. Right? That's what sickness is, a crystallized conflict.
Yeah, completely. And even worse, some people come to troll, and actually to turn up pretending to have good intent, but with the intent of actually disrupting that whole process
And the people
for their own personal gain or
The
enjoyment, I
camouflage,
guess.
Sure.
The camouflage.
And the people that don't need to do that process, right? They don't need to, because it's not actually, they're not creating or maintaining the conflict. All their time and energy gets pulled into that conflict and used up in that process by the people who aren't doing it. That's the situation. That's how it goes.
And we've been there, hey?
Yeah.
We've been there, and it's all consuming.
Oh,
It's the snake in the Garden of
all
Eden.
consuming.
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a black hole.
If you could if there weren't the
Close.
psychopaths, everything would be happy. None of us want to hurt to dominate anybody.
But do you think that the people that behave that way are all psychopaths, or there's some this category of people that just want to use power over and do that kind of behaviour where they avoid conflict resolution and they just wander around manipulation? Is that is it just an immaturity? Is it the immature masculine and immature feminine being out of control? Or are they all psychopaths, or just a subset of them? Or
No, the victims, I think, what you're referring to is the victims' lack of maturity is because they haven't been provided in their culture with a roadmap forward.
Yeah.
And that's the effect of the psychopathy. who's taken their parents to war or to work in the factory of the mine, destroyed their societies, you know. The effect of exploitation and brutalisation has broken society, and you know, and the nurture and the pathways forward have all disappeared. So kids are immature and they grow up to be fucked up and, you know, narcissistic or, you know, just egocentric or whatever. And this is the effect of I think, you know, and there's Lobachevsky's view as well.
Yeah, right.
My experience is that there's equal parts conditioning and trauma, and you can work on all the trauma you want, but if you don't work on your conditioning, you're going to be messed up. You can work on all your conditioning, but if you don't work on your trauma, you're not going to progress, right? So it's conditioning and trauma that is holding people in these stuck, repeating patterns, and then that's just getting passed around.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so can we dig into that a little bit? Like what is an example of conditioning and what is an example of trauma? Like trauma is obviously a past wound that every time something happens, you react in an unhelpful way because those emotions aren't processed.
Can we nail it down to an example?
And conditioning might be like something like
Getting big in
I've
school.
been told that, you know, women don't speak in a group and therefore I get to dominate. That's conditioning versus trauma, or is that the kind of thing
Well,
you're talking about?
you can't really separate them because they're functioning as the same thing, right? Which is like an imbalance or an illness or a suffering, right? But you got to understand that there's conditioning, which is a learnt habitual response, right? Which is like unconscious or subconscious.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the part of us that's just automatically functioning. And we're automatically functioning based upon all the programming, all the imprints, all the learning that we've had.
From parents, from schools.
Well, from the moment of conception.
Yeah.
From the moment of conception, if not past life and ancestral,
Yeah.
which I would say both of those things.
That's what you talk about, the born psychopath. That's
Right.
the not genetics but epigenetics.
Sure.
You're
And I think
like-
that's
Yeah.
epigenetically true.
You're
Yeah.
like a sponge, right? And you're becoming the totality of the information and patterning that you've absorbed at whatever time, right? Until your conscious self, start going through a process of self-realization, and you start connecting to a higher level of reasoning, a higher level of cognitive functioning and consciousness and awareness, the ability to make sense of things. And you start reorganizing. You start going like, who am I in the world? Where am I in the world? What makes me who I am? What is the world? You start going through this inquiry process, right?
Yep.
And so from that point that the conscious mind is in inquiry and is reorganizing things, you start to, be the doctor of your own narrative, your own kind of entity, or your own identity. But until that point, and from that point forward, you're still trying to individuate yourself from every other entity and identity that you've been absorbing. So you've got to go through that process of becoming truly yourself in relation to all of the forces that have tried to or have successfully made you what you were until that point.
Right.
So that's conditioning, right? Trauma is like in a moment of suffering, like whatever the impact is that takes you out of alignment with the life, like with living, with life force, with health, right? You're in balance, you're in alignment with creation, you're in alignment with your vessel, your being, you're having a harmonious existence, right? Trauma is an impact that occurs and in that moment forms a pattern. So that's a form of conditioning, but it's
learning.
It can be a learning, but it can be a learning, but it can also like a tuning fork. Like if you get a tuning fork that's in harmony and you hit it really loud and it's lovely, but then you smash it with a hammer and it's out of tune, you're like, did the tuning fork just learn something or did it just get knocked out of tune, right? So trauma, right? And so the ability to bring yourself back into harmony after that impact, to resolve that impact, to bring yourself back into balance so you can sing your song or your tone, that's healing, right? And it's removing the influence of that trauma. But the ability to do that is defined by your conditioning. So your conditioning is like how the tuning fork's being used, and then trauma is like the damage that tuning fork has been through. Yeah.
Nice. Love that analogy.
Very good.
And hey, Mr. Barman, is there more stuff coming?
What you can do.
I mean, it's such an engaging conversation. Hey? I mean, who thought we'd be talking about evil? We thought we were just going to get together and have a few laughs.
About evil.
Yeah, that's what you hooked me in on.
I did it by talking about angels, I'm sorry. As soon as you talk about angels, then you have to deal with the evil.
Well, that's
It's a big problem. People don't talk about evil.
Yeah.
It's a term's out of favour because it sounds absolutist and religious. But it isn't, and it doesn't matter.
Well, how would you? What would we define evil as? Like something like something that is
We all know what it is.
against against life, like something that
anti-life is how
anti-life, something that damages rather than enhances or something. Is that?
And then the scale of that is obviously like not just the scale of impact, but the scale. The way that we measure evil is like, does it know it's causing that harm? Right? Is that an unconscious harm that it's causing? It doesn't know, or is it a deliberate harm? Right. So the more deliberate the harm and the greater the harm, the more evil we say it is.
In nature, there are things called cordyceps. You know what cordyceps are, right?
Yeah. Mushrooms.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, they're so called. Are they a mushroom? I don't know. But they're categorised broadly in that the fungal kingdom. But I don't know if they really are. I think they're sort of too weird. I mean, there's one of them's a fish. One of them gets inside a fish's mouth and inhabits its tongue. And after a while, it becomes the tongue. It actually becomes the tongue. And it has its own teeth. And it uses the genetic code of the fish to create a mouth and eyes in the tongue so that when the fish goes to eat food, it eats it.
I've never heard of that one before.
Yep, check it out. You've all heard of the ones where it gets inside the ant that makes the ant go to the top of the thing? Or the ant, or it gets inside the crab on the beach.
Yep.
Another form of cordyceps.
Okay.
Gets inside a crab, crab eats a bit of poo, cordyceps is in it. The cordyceps gets inside the crab and gets in its brain, takes over its brain, and it makes it leave its safe cover in its little hole and run out towards the seagulls who eat them. And it swoops out, it overrides every safety and every sort of every impulse to protection. And the little crab goes running out towards the seagull gobbles it up, eats it. Then the thing's in the seagull's gut, and the seagull shits it out, and the crab eats it again, and that's its cycle. And they do it with ants as well. They're they use the genetic material of the other animal to override itself. This is the cordyceps.
Yeah.
They're incredibly elaborate. It's not just ants. The fish one's incredible. You should see it. Look at images of the fish with the cordyceps in its tongue. It's just like gross. Now, is that evil? It's a survival mechanism. The wasp will get a caterpillar and put its larvae inside its gut. They eat the thing out alive, and they feed on it. I mean, that's what they do. Is it evil?
Yeah.
It's what it does. So, in one sense, is the consciousness of the psychopath perhaps not? Maybe it's not a human. Maybe a psychopath is just a possessed being. They've taken over the mind. They're like the cordyceps, and they're acting out. Now, my view is that there's no such thing as a born psychopath, but there is an inherited trauma. I'm sure of it.
Oh, completely.
See, look, the most psychopathic nation in the world is Israel, for sure. They daily have to go out and kill people. No, they do. Every person is in the army, and they all go through bastardization. And bastardization is sadism. Prove to us you really are.
Yeah,
You've got to brutalise that child.
Right.
You've got to bugger that child and slit its throat.
Blood right initiation.
Yeah, I'll shoot you.
What?
In Israel, it's a country which is based on, well, it's an invaded country, and it cruelly and sadistically dominates and terrifies the locals. Children are picked up every night. You'll never see them again. They go into the marketplace for children. It's a major slave trading place up there with say, Ukraine. And
Which the link between them is pretty.
yeah, well, that's right. It's the same place.
But
in a sense.
this brings us back to.
So what is evil?
This brings us back to the genesis story of evil on this planet. You're talking about cordyceps, right? As a parasitic, devouring entity that takes over life force and life form and consumes through.
Does anyone else want another drink? Sorry, just
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think we're probably all familiar with the Archon philosophies, or the origin of there being a space race, a race of beings beyond the planet that, like the cordyceps and like the fungus, came to the planet and colonized and have become a part of the spiritual ecology of the planet and parasitically kind of move through the planet and move through the beings of the planet.
Yep.
And there's a lot of very interesting, sophisticated, intelligent people come to that conclusion. It's a fairly
Finished.
And there seems to be a lot of traditional cultures that also hold similar stories, like the Wedico and the Native American, and
Yeah, absolutely.
the mind parasites.
Yeah.
That's right. the genesis of evil
Yeah, so
is an
evil
ongoing issue.
innate to human, you know, to Homo sapien, or is it an infiltration? And
Look at monkey behaviour. Some monkeys
No water for me, bro. Just the.
Just straight.
Yeah. Thank you.
straight no chaser.
Yeah.
I'll
that's you.
just
Yeah, it's straight. Yeah, sorry.
thank you.
So
Yeah. So evil. It's a big problem, isn't it?
it's a problem. I mean,
It's
I
the-
like the conversation. I also I like the you know, what's the solution? How do we deal with it? Like, you know, coming to the Northern Rivers to me is exposed the biggest lesson that I learned coming here, and I've been here like 11 years, and the biggest lesson that I'm still learning is discernment. Discernment of who I engage with and picking out all this stuff, really. And then how do we manage that in community, in group
A lot of people
Well-
are fakes and
And-
flakes and
Yeah, I mean,
to,
yeah.
to represent like the spiritual bypassers, perhaps. You know, like I've been squirming quite a bit during this conversation, and in terms of discernment, like because you know where you place your attention, you know, you place your energy. And we, you know, we know that, you know, in the Vedas it says that, you know, consciousness doesn't exist. Consciousness is existence. You know, and in many of you know of you know our ancient cultures, you know, they put a lot of emphasis on mind stuff and
Yeah.
you know the creative power of our word, etc. And there's a frequency that we could possibly measure. You know, when we talk about things like evil, and when we talk about things like love, and when we talk about things like, you know, synergy and harmony and cooperation and syntropic gardening and etc., which we haven't really, we haven't you know shone a lot of light of awareness on those topics. But anyway, on the topic of discernment, it's like for me, as a being of frequency, you know, who's you know very aware, you know, of these other influences and these other you know beings or consciousnesses were, you know, akin to cordyceps in the ether or in the astral or whatever. It's like, well, is this conversation actually, you know, is it attracting more of those, you know, subtle, heavy energies here, and therefore, you know, contributing to kind of then
their existence.
unconsciously kind of steering the conversation in a way that aggregates more of that, or is that spiritual bypass, is that whole perception
It's
a function of my unconscious spiritual bypassing?
I think what you said is definitely true. It's part of the picture.
Yeah.
That when you speak about things, you tend to sort of like resonate them. Having said that, we're men, not children. We've got to take uncomfortable truths and hold on to them, not believe in them, but it won't be dealt with if we don't deal with it. We can't all just sort of like be happy clappers and hope it goes away.
Yeah.
Because it won't.
Yeah.
It never has.
No.
And you need to have some mechanism
Exactly.
to deal with it.
And that's what Mike was talking about, the solutions, right? So for me, I agree with you completely, and I watch this kind of thing as well. To me, it's about where you actually end up placing it, like the waveform of the interaction or the conversation. So if you go through something like this and it's like, wow, that's heavy, I don't really know if I want to talk about it or give it energy, right?
Well, like,
It's a way of
Just the left-hand
processing
slider.
the energy, which is defined by what is the outcome, what are the solutions, where do we actually put that, right? So if we're invoking it with our words, right? If we just go, no, I'm going to talk about that, then you're not really doing anything with it. But if we naturally, as a group, come to this theme or this topic, and then we do something with it, right? We process it in a particular way, we come to a solution. The tone or the note or the frequency of what we do with that, right? The end point, the outcome, is where it all ends up.
Yeah.
Right. So we've kind of processed the waveform of that experience or that energy or that theme. And you know, are we doing this on a transpersonal level as a facility of the collective consciousness of the land and the culture in order to process it, in order to put it in the right place, right? if we are, because we're all well-intentioned and wise people, then it's probably worth the process, right? But if we're just talking for the sake of talking and we're talking about horrible stuff and we're not actually, it doesn't need to happen, then I would agree with you, and it's a waste of time and energy. Yeah.
But that's what I think about those films, movies that are just gratuitously evil and satanic, and they're not really doing any good. I think they're not resolving it. They're sort of like dwelling in it, having a fascination and obsession with it. But there's a guy called P.K. Marzulli. Have you heard of this guy, Marzulli? He's a really interesting character. He's a psychologist. But he began off as in working psych wards as a sort of orderly. He was a big, solid guy, like he'd been football type thing. But he was a really sweet, understanding, kind person. And he didn't like the treatment of inmates. He didn't like the violence to them and the constant sort of medication, and the indifference to their story. And he would listen to their stories, their internal stories. What's happening for you? Who's talking to you? What do they look like? What do they want you to do? Do you have to listen to them? Have you got it? And he would get right into them. And he started to heal people who are schizophrenic and were medicated. Because
is this the guy in Hawaii? The guy that...
No, that's Dr. Hugh Len.
That's Hugh Len.
You're
Oh, yeah.
Ho'oponopono.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, but no, related sort of thing. But Marzulli was, he after a while, when he talked to them, they began to recover from the schizophrenia, and they'd take a while before they'd trust him and say, yeah, there's a demon that comes to me and says, I've got to kill that guy, and he said, oh, did you ask him why? And he never thought to ask him why. Because he's sort of too terrifying and persuasive. He goes, you might be terrifying and persuasive, but just try asking him why. And stuff like this. And he'd get them moving. And
that's the power of inquiry, right?
Yeah,
So
to use your consciousness to shine it into that dark place.
Unconscious and subconscious mind needs the conscious mind to make inquiry, because otherwise it will take over. So the conscious mind needs to navigate and relegate and organise and navigate, whereas the subconscious and unconscious is just habitual. It's just going to go through the cycle.
Check out Marzulli. He's really good. Marzuli.
Yeah, cool.
And he's and he talks them through and gets them out of it, saying, okay, there's a demon there. And he says, oh, there's a world called the Jinn. You heard of the word of the Jinn? So he says they're there, and he goes, but after a while, it's like my mate Cody, he calls them, instead of evil, the weevils.
Yeah.
They're just a nuisance.
Yeah.
And Marzulli says you get to a point where they go from being like white pointers under your bed to just fucking, nits in your hair.
Ankle biters instead of archons.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
The weevils. I like
Humour
weevils.
is one of our greatest psychic defences.
So powerful.
Yeah.
To be able to ironically deconstruct their authority and their power is and that's what he was doing to them. And he said at one point this guy came in and he said, I was going to kill you because the voice said I had to kill you. And he said, Marzulli said, different patients would say things consistent with that only he'd said to another patient, so that the same demons seemed to be splitting information and acting.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And so,
really
and that's why he began to believe there was a dimension called the Jinn. And he didn't believe it at first. He just believed in the Western system of sometimes brains get fucked up, the wiring, the chemistry. We just got to give them a bunch of like Gactyl to sort of pacify them in a zombie management, and just feed them on Farax and keep them in padded rooms. And the cruelty of that was overwhelming to him, and so he began to do this, and he's had great success, and he's changed everything. And apparently in Turkey, that's what they do. He said, if you were in a psych ward in Turkey, that's exactly what they do.
Yeah, right.
Other cultures understand the Jinn, understand that you've become sort of somehow you've lost your capacity, your spiritual immunity, and you've been infected by these bastards, and they can sort of lead you out of that by acknowledging your condition, honouring it, and leading you through it. We don't do that because we deny anything subtle. The Western world is in denial of anything subtle.
Right.
So, we're going to talk about solutions. I've trained in over the last, 15 years, probably 5 or 6 different energetic, healing, spiritual, traditional kind of practices. Right? And they all have different ways of organising these topics or these energies, these dynamics. Right? And so I've got like a little section from each one. It's like, from that one, that's how they do that. From that one, that's how they do that.
Nice.
So in my mind, when I'm talking about these things or looking at it on a personal level, on a healing level, on a collective level.
But different types of weevils.
Different types of weevils, yeah. But there's just different ways of navigating the weave. Like, how do you weave your consciousness and your energy and your situations around this, right? You know, on one particular practice, her belief was the power of unconditional love. And so the power of unconditional love, if you're tapped into the universal flow of life force, and you're tapped into it with unconditional love, and these energies or entities or people come at you, right, that you are able to transmute that through staying in love and staying in unconditional love. And if you do that, you stay in your own energy and you balance your own energy, then it will work out, right? And we've all had these miraculous moments in our life where we just kind of changed our mindset and something really catastrophic just like fell out of existence or changed in a way that we needed, right? Because we just changed our mindset, right? So I've whittled that down. I've worked with original Australian traditional healing and had an idea from them, which is a lot more ecological about like spirit and entities and these kinds of forces. And at the moment I'm working with the idea of authority, right? And the idea of authority is that as long as you're connected to what you would call your spirit or your soul or yourself, whatever it is, creation, and you know that you have choice and you make that choice, then there's a navigation between authority, your authority and the authority of whatever the other dynamic is, right?
Yeah.
And so as long as you're being conscious and in control of your authority in relationship to other authority, then you have a choice.
Yeah.
And if you make that choice, then you're going to be able to find the way through it.
Yeah.
But if you give up your personal responsibility or your personal empowerment of choice
Yeah.
in your internal authority in relation to an external authority, then you can have trouble.
Well, I had that experience, but I believed that, you know, that my personal authority was my intuition. But it seemed that, and who knows, like in the final analysis whether that's true or not, but it felt like I was very much being hijacked and very much being guided to have certain experiences and see and have certain information kind of presented to me that was pretty, you know, pretty freaky and weird. And then like I went to a healer and he said, well, you need to close your crown chakra, because I'd been in a tobacco ceremony and it had blown my crown chakra like wide open, and in my naivete, like I kind of just felt like I was just getting fully downloaded from my higher source. But he was saying like, well, these mind parasites.
Can we just stop for a second? Just
Yeah.
this noise in the background.
Yeah.
This truck.
That these mind parasites, these weevils, they don't have that they don't have the same physical manifest state of power that homo, you know, that humans have, or man and woman has.
Yep.
And so they can't actually cause you any harm, but they can cause you to think things, and they can influence things through your mind to move you to make decisions to bring you into harm. So once I was aware of that distinction, then I could say, well, actually, no, you know, I'm feeling guided to do this, but actually I want to do this, so I'm going to do this. And yeah.
So that's your reclaiming of authority, and so from where I sit, that process of going into a dimensional space, right, where you've gone beyond the normal dimension of reality, and you're not necessarily aware of how that dimensional space functions, right? And so in that place, you've gone from conscious navigation of a dimension that you know about into, you call it intuition, but you might also call it unconscious or subconscious. It's like habitual, reactive, automatic choices. And so that's where you've kind of lost your authority because you're in a space that you don't understand, and there's other authorities operating. So you've gone to someone who knows about how to navigate that, and they've gone like, you know, here you are, and here's these other authorities, and here's the point where you didn't have awareness of those authorities, and now you have the choice. And so you make the choice, and the influence goes away because you're back to your dimension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually part of that process was a huge forgiveness process, like forgiving God. In the final, in
That's
the
a
final
good one.
aspect.
That's a song there, Forgiving God.
Yeah.
God is forgiving, but We must forgive God. If we're going to give God, we must be forgiving God.
And that would come to the other point, is if you roll into a dimension that you're vulnerable to, right, and there's other forces at play, right, what are they going to do? They're going to go to your weakness, right? If you haven't forgiven God and you have a weakness there, right, there's a weakness where there's something that's not whole or complete or healed, it's got a charge, right?
Yeah.
And that charge is the access point.
Yeah.
So if you heal your trauma and your conditioning of where you carry these charges, even if you stumble into a multi-dimensional feeding fest where there's all sorts of creatures going on you don't know nothing about, because you don't have these weaknesses in stories and unfinished business and unhealed trauma and like egos or whatever it is, there's nowhere for it to hook in.
Yeah.
So you can see some people, they just like stumble, you know, unaware through all sorts of stuff, and they're inaccessible. It doesn't affect them, right? Because they don't have these niggling things. Whereas
they're innocent. Their innocence kind of protects them.
there's a certain innocence. Yeah. Well, innocence is wholeness, right? It's not being, you know, interfered with. Yeah. And so, you know, we return to our innocence when we resolve where we've been violated or how we've been violated and how we've played that violation through our lives and violated others, right? That's the kind of karmic balance point. And when we get that violation sorted, then we come back to our original innocence, which is like bliss. We're just in bliss. Yeah.
Animals of bliss. Beings of bliss.
Beings of bliss.
Nice.
Yeah.
Moving in that direction.
I met you at the Bliss Dog.
Bliss activism.
Blissful and Dan Winter.
Hey, that's a good one.
Dan Winter.
What was it?
Blissipline.
Discipline.
You said it was a Dan Winterism, was it?
So good.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's good, isn't he? Did you ever meet him?
No.
Because he used to come out here a lot. He used to stay in Mullumbimby a fair bit.
Did talks at Starseed as well.
And it's all Starseed I met him with
Were you in did I meet you at Starseed?
Just at the very end.
Okay.
Dan
Yeah.
Schreiber's place.
Yeah, just near the very end there.
Poor old Dan. May R.I.P.
R.I.P. Well, he's rocking it, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
he's
Wherever he
rocking
is,
it.
he's
He's
rocking
not poor
it.
old Dan anymore.
No, exactly.
He had a poor old Dan moment, and then he went supernova.
I could hear him chortling in the ether.
Yeah.
So, how the heaven do we,
How in heaven and hell.
how in heaven and hell, thank you, how in heaven and hell, how on earth,
Heaven's name.
how in each present moment do we work with groups, especially groups of people that are newly forming and where you may not know the other people very well? Is it a matter of like, here's a filter, and if you pass the maturity or whatever the word is we want to use, the maturity checklist, you're in? Or is it like, I don't know, what do we do?
Well, this is the.
I got a lot to say on this, so I'll wait for you
I've
guys.
I've just got a little bit to say about this. I believe, and it's just a belief, that in the old days you had elders who had clear vision,
Yeah.
who had
We've
insight
lo-
and
we've lost that.
foresight, and yeah, they were fully connected. So they could tell you when you were ready, if you were ready. Like they could say, okay, this is your path, this is your dharma, this is what you're good at, this is your design. I'm going to put you with these people, and they're going to help you unfold this blueprint.
You're a hunter, you're a gardener, you're a sexual healer, you're a monkery, whatever.
What job?
Whatever.
Yeah.
Was that job going, was it?
Yeah,
I'll
100%.
put my hand up for the third one.
You put your hand up for it, you probably won't get it.
Damn.
That's how we know it's not you, buddy.
And if you
Especially if you
wanted
put your whole hand up.
if you wanted to join join a community or a level within that community or whatever, then they'd just like look you up and down or whatever and go no or yes, you know that, or you go through some initiatory process and you either passed or failed.
The very short of mine was basically what you just said. It's rites of passage and initiation, because there's skills and abilities. Like you think about rites of passage and initiation, right? There's information, there's coding, there's conditioning, there's healing, there's challenges, there's skills
letting
that
go.
learn, right?
Yeah.
And so you need, in order to get to the point where you can healthfully function in a group dynamic, you need to go through that process of rites of passage or initiation, which culture was holding. Culture is no longer holding. And the actual process of rites of initiation and the becoming of age of the ability to have a particular role is a birth process. It's a birth process, and in the birth process, life and death are getting counterbalanced. So there's the life and death of what's being reborn and maintained, and the death of what can no longer continue. So it's a gatekeeping, right? The issue we have in culture is we don't have cultural gatekeeping anymore. There's nothing that holds that boundary.
We don't even have culture anymore. We used to have a marketplace, you know.
Pretty dark in here.
The main theme of our
The
world
sound
is,
better be good.
don't ask why, just buy. And all you are is just a consumer and products, and other than a whole bunch of incredibly illuminated, powerful, wonderful people. That's not considered product worth pursuing, or the extent to which that's offered, it's going to cost you a lot of dough. You know,
We seem to kind of exist in a miasma of,
Exactly.
of post-modernity and nihilism.
yeah, it's
kind of thing,
yeah,
like-
yeah. Arrested
the
development.
evil that I see is the materialization and objectification of all existence. It's been put into a dimensional box where it's a material object.
Yeah.
And every aspect
It's for
of
sale.
reality is going to be treated like a material object, including
Utility
your soul,
only.
including your worth, including your time, energy, and money. Like, it's all a material object. And that's the dimensional trap that I believe these things that we talk about that may or may not exist
Yeah.
in
The
other
weevils.
dimensions, that's where they're really able to create their challenge for humanity, is if you get stuck in a one-dimensional box because you're in a controlled reality.
Have you ever seen one?
Seen what?
An evil.
I've had all sorts of experiences. I'm
Yeah.
sure we all have. I'm sure we all have.
Have you?
Ever seen an evil spirit?
I had the manifestation of a super evil entity, and it was just the room was super cold, and it sort of came into shape, and it had a sort of vague shape, and it sort of vaguely eyes and vaguely form, and it was just absolutely. It just seemed like absolute evil. I was about 17. I was in sleep. I was in my room, and it was sucking the life force out of me, and all of a sudden I found myself flat in my bed, and it was on top of my chest, sucking. Has anyone had that experience? Haven't had that?
No,
No.
not at all.
You've had something like it.
Just
but,
you,
the
Frank.
book- No, I've spoken to a lot of people who've had a similar experience. Anyway, I asked for the help from the higher force, right?
Yeah.
And I was able to. It was like a bench press, just able to just throw it off like that.
Uh-huh.
And at the end of it, I was absolutely wet with sweat, and I could hear people outside the room looking around. But I've also had an angel take
What
me to heaven.
specifically did you say? What did you call on at that time?
Oh, you know, the Lord God,
Yeah.
just God, you know, whatever term will do, the Force. I don't know, but just you know, the higher power, and it came.
It
through.
sounds like most of my wet dreams.
I think this is going in a bad direction. Mike.
Sorry, I'll let that go.
More gender fluid on the floor. Anyway,
Well, that's a whole other topic about dream infiltration.
Yeah.
That I've
Yeah,
sure.
just come across.
yeah.
Well,
No pun intended.
again,
But a lot of people have that experience, by the way.
we
of
talk
evil.
about this as
Yeah, right.
dimensional bleeds.
Black fella's talking
right?
about it too.
We talk about like dimensional bleeds, like you say, there's like the earth dimension, and then there's the human dimension, and then there's layers of other dimensions that are occurring at the same time. And if you're able to keep yourself in balance and keep things in check, then you're only connecting to the dimensions of energy that are beneficial. But there's also a dimension that's harmful, which, you know, the Christian or Catholic faith, we've talked about hell, or, you know, you see it depicted in certain places, a lower dimensional field. Right, so if you go through a rites of passage or a birthing into your multidimensional reality through a tribal or neo-tribal initiation, then you learn the skills and the abilities to navigate all the dimensions. You learn to understand what those dimensions are, what their natures are, what the characteristics, like you're having a garden. You know, you're growing a garden. You just got to know all the components of the garden, how to keep it in balance, how to keep the pests in check. Right, so that's the essential skill set for us to learn, is what are the essential skills for us to, on a very basic level, ensure that we inoculate humanity and society and our cultures and our groups and our families and our relationships to be able to confidently navigate all the dimensions, including the bad one. Right?
Yeah.
What are those skill sets?
Yeah.
Give me a couple of weeks. Give me a couple of weeks together, and we can do that. But you know, and it's not just me. It's like lots of people that are doing this. But that's really the transmission of this empowerment about how to navigate multidimensional reality as a spiritual being. That's really the missing component in our society, and trauma and conditioning is the reason why that's not happening, because it's holding people in that box.
Yeah, well, look, it's true. We've lost the village. We've lost eldership. We've lost rites of passage.
Connection to
Cultural
spirit.
maps.
We've lost connection to place, connection to spirit, and a lot
History.
of people even have lost connection to themselves. Yeah, connection to the true history of what we've all been through.
I would say all those things are a constant process. It's not like a static thing where
That's right,
you've
of
lost
course.
something and you have to regain it. I'd say you're constantly having to work
No,
to restore all of those
the
things.
dynamics.
Yeah.
The dynamics.
Yeah, well, always. I mean, that's growth. Like, we're always growing, we're always learning more, we're always expanding more, and we're always going deeper into those things. But when I say, I agree with you. When I say we've lost it, like,
You're talking about a cultural
for
collective
white,
scale.
cultural collective scale.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
white Western Europeans, we lost this, like, whatever, 500,
Yeah,
600,
a lot
700
of
years
others,
ago, right?
Asian
And
too.
nowadays,
And again, the ancestral story and the ancestral karma of how that disconnect or that fracturing happened is also very interesting. It's also very, very interesting.
well, maybe we can have a yarn about that another day.
Yeah, it's probably a good one for another time.
So yeah, Sandy just put his head around the corner and said we're coming up to 2 hours. I don't know. I mean, I don't mind.
Time, yes.
We can just go as long as we want. Unless, is there a time we have to stop? The light's going. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So maybe now's a good
All right.
time to wrap it up. But I'd love to continue the conversation and go a bit more deeper into solutions. Because again, the next thing I was going to say is, well, totally agree with what Eli's saying, but how do we do that? How do we form healthy, functional groups, and how do we apply all those things that need to be applied?
Such a big bleep, yeah.
For me personally, like it's
We need a new religion.
You know, this is kind of a zone that I'm focused in. I have been focused in, people around me as well.
Yeah.
To me, that's a design element. That's just where my philosophy comes from.
Yeah.
It's just a design element that we're lacking that has the essential information, the essential skill set, the essential maps, essential
Completely
processes, right? And we've got organic things happening where this and that is emerging and this helps here or in that way. But the actual integrative kind of holistic system that says, here's the best practice model that we can generate for you to have the right design to do this, and then you just color it and flavor it and change it as you need to. You choose your own adventure. But that's really, that's the thing that we've been working on over the last couple of years, really.
Yeah, completely.
Because there's all these different tools, but what you need is the toolkit and the instructions on how to use the toolkit as a combined thing, and the explanation of why do you need all these tools.
And then the time to go through, and time and willingness and all the resources you need to go through that process. It's I'm a bit impatient. Like, I want to get good groups going in tomorrow, not take 5 years of training. But who says it's going to take 5 years? Maybe it's not.
No, I believe that the people who
Takes.
the people who've done the 15 years make it 5 years for others. The people who've done the 5 years, which I'll probably put my hand up for, I've done the 5 years of solid on that particular thing. Make it into a couple of weeks.
couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So that's how it, as culture, that's how culture grows. It just refines and kind of integrates and then makes it sophisticated, simple, and available.
Sure.
Because we have complex problems, we need sophisticated solutions.
Understood. Well, on that note, how would we like to close? Do we want to? Does anyone want to make any closing comments or run around the room naked or
Again?
Well, thank you. I mean, I wanted to pick up on the forgiveness piece, right? Because two things that I see that are the easiest thing for people to access and the most important is forgiveness and gratitude. Right? So if you go through a process of forgiveness and then you go through a process of gratitude, just, we're talking about Ho'oponopono, right? It's kind of the same thing, right? But that dispels the demons, right? It resolves the charge and the energetic link that we have in stress and emotion and tension and thought forms between dimensions.
Okay. So if you guys are up for this, why don't we go around the square? It's almost a circle. There's 4 of us.
Yep.
And we'll do a round of forgiving something and then a round of gratitude to finish. Is that a bit too? Is that appropriate? Are people up for that, or we just wrap it up and turn the camera off?
Why not? It's a challenge.
Well, and it's optional. Not everyone has to participate.
Sincerity, right? Sincerity, authenticity in the moment. Does that feel real to me, right? Discernment. Discernment, right? Does that feel real to me? What part of that feels real to me, right? What am I carrying that I need to forgive, right?
I forgive you, Mike, for leaving your socks on my pillow. And I show gratitude for not shitting in my bed. That's called Amber Heard immunity. I've got that.
Amber Heard immunity.
Yeah. That's right. Sitting on my bed's okay. But only sitting, yeah.
And the counterbalance of irreverence is great.
Raising the bar of sincerity. That's good.
Well, I'll just give gratitude for the conversation and for you four. There's 3 in front of the camera, but Sandy out the back here.
Yeah.
4 amazing beings that helped make this happen. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Love you all.
Thank you
Thanks,
too,
guys.
mate.
Yeah.
Good on you, boys.
Beautiful ceremony.
Great company.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that, Mike. Like, just, yeah.
I'll go with that.
See you later.
Cheers.
Oh, not literally.